Morning, seventh grade. It is 8 o'clock on Friday. I've got a meeting at 8:30, so we got to get right to it. This video won't be long today, but these are the notes. Like I told you yesterday in class, the link to this full slideshow is going to be posted in Google Classroom, and I'll send home on a remind today. Probably won't send this out till after the meeting because I'll be spending my time before this meeting, obviously making this video. The video hopefully will be under 20 minutes, between 10 and 20, I'm guessing. But as you can see, we're chapter 2, section 3. Make sure you write these down. Like I told the people in class yesterday, there's nothing that I'm going to be able to do to prove that you wrote it down on Friday, September 4th or whatever. But when it comes time at the end of chapter 3 in October, at the end of the 9 weeks to check your notebooks, I'm going to need to see that this is not just in your notebook, but in order between chapter 2, section 2 and chapter 2, section 4. Of course, I'll put an attendance question somewhere in the video today to make sure that you're watching this. For those of you that can't watch this, I gave paper copies yesterday, but you can't watch this anyway, so nobody can hear me that applies to. So, but anyway, if you have a paper copy, that's fine, but you do need to copy it down into your notebook. Like I said, I'm grading those. So we've been talking about in section 1 the beginning of European exploration into what we now know as the Americas. The Americas meaning North and South America, and also specifically the United States of America, although we're not getting to that until a little bit later. Like we said yesterday, Columbus, or I guess 2 days ago, Columbus never stepped foot in what we now call the United States. A lot of these guys didn't. They landed in Central and South America, and one of the main reasons is because it's closer. Honestly, if you look at a Google Maps or a globe or whatever, all of South America is east of. I said east, but that's just what a map would look like. But actually, east is that way. East is that way in my room. But east of even Michigan and Illinois are in America, which is not even to the middle of our United States. We're much further west than South America is, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. A lot of people think we're just stacked right on top of each other, but that's not necessarily true. So today we're talking about Spain. Conquistadors. Conquistadors is the Spanish word that just basically means conqueror, and that really from the start, just that basic idea will tell you what you need to know. Okay, they don't call these guys discoverers or explorers or happy fun, party spreaders or confetti parade throwers. They call them conquerors, and the reason they do that is going to become very, very evident. They did not consider themselves someone who was just out there looking for other things. They thought of themselves as people who are taking things around the world for what they consider to be the motherland of Spain. So the Spanish rulers gave them cash. And like I said, I think in most of our classes the other day, if you're a king or a queen, this is pretty easy work. And this is a pretty easy decision, because basically what happens is you send guys off just constantly. Hey, I'd like to sail. I'd like some boats. Okay. Hey, I'd like to sail. I'd like some boats. Okay. And if you're somebody that wants to set sail, it's a pretty easy decision, because unless you're a member of the ruling community in these countries, you're usually just a poor farmer. And so this is an opportunity for you to try to strike out and make things on your own. And they did not by any means all go well. The ones you're going to hear about today are the ones that went well for them. But the only reason you're hearing about them today is because they survived. A lot of these people died in shipwrecks at sea or whatever. And so when you look at a farmer trying to make this decision, it's pretty simple. Do I want to keep, things might get worse, things might get better, but I can't stand any more of just the same thing day after day after day. And I think we understand that a little bit better than maybe we would in the past due to the, recent quarantine and lockdown and stuff. I know I was sitting at home day after day after day, and I was like, I just want something different. It didn't necessarily have to be better. And so for them, it was a decision that they would make. And for Spanish rulers, it was an easy decision too. The cost of buying ships and providing food for these people to the king and queen of Spain is, like I said, I think on the video last time, to you it'd be like finding change in your couch cushions. It's really no amount of money to them. And so if the person makes it, the Spanish king and queen takes 20% of it, and the sailor, the conquistador, keeps 80% of it. And so you could see why this is a desirable situation for people that want to get in on it. And so if you send guy one out and he comes back with $10 million worth of gold and you're the Spanish king, now you get $2 million for doing nothing. If you send guy two out and he dies in a shipwreck, okay, I lost a boat and some guys. If you send guy three out and he comes back with $100 million, now you've made $20 million for doing nothing. Send guy four out and he gets stabbed in the Philippines like Magellan did. Okay, again, now today, sitting here in 2020, it seems pretty cruel to do things like that. And it was, to just send people out like, well, if he dies, I don't lose that much money. But, that's how things were back then. The idea of death really didn't faze them as much as it does now. And that's, a good thing for us now that we take our lives more seriously. But back then, life expectancy was much shorter. People didn't live as long. And so the idea of sending people out on adventures and they possibly might come back, not come back, was just like you just shrug and say, okay. And so this says basically what I already said. There's very, very little risk for Spanish rulers. If one fails, they don't lose much, but if they succeed, they could gain a lot. So it's a very low risk for them, high reward situation. And again, like I said, it seems cruel for me to sit here and say it was low risk because the only thing that can happen is the boats crash and all the people die. And that's true. I believe that. But for them back then, that's how they thought. And, obviously, thankfully, we have a little bit more compassion for people nowadays. So Hernan Cortes is the first one we'll talk about. He lands in Mexico in 1519. Long story short, he's got guns and the Native Americans don't. And that really tips the scales as far as everything that's going to happen from here on out. The Native Americans are going to get guns eventually from Europeans. But he finds Tenochtitlan. Another thing that these Spaniards had that did not, and it's weird to think about because you live not only in the United States, but you live in the Midwestern part of the United States. You live in a very, very rural area, country area. You're going to drive when you're out driving today or tomorrow or this weekend, you're going to drive by fields and stuff. And everywhere you go, you'll see horses. Some of you have probably ridden horses. Some of you probably have horses. Horses did not exist native to North and South America. Horses weren't here until the Europeans came, until these Spaniards came. And so, of course, obviously the horses took to North and South America. They thrived. They succeeded. But they didn't exist. But think about even that. If you are a Native American and you're on foot fighting with spears and maybe bows and arrows, best case, and all of a sudden you come in with these guys with these giant animals that you've never seen before who are fast and able to be controlled and these boom boom sticks that they could point at you and make you disappear. It had to be overwhelming. It had to be, a lot of these people were considering these as like fighting a god. And, to these Native Americans, excuse me, it was a lot like that. So the Aztec, like I said, they're going to be, the victims of the situation, but they're not entirely innocent either. Like we talked about in the last chapter, they were already in a situation where they were going out and conquering other lands to begin with. But anyway, Cortes, Montezuma, the leader of the Aztec, was actually really nice to Cortes. He was like, hey, what's up, buddy? Come in. He gave him a castle. He gave him all the food he could eat. He basically treated him like royalty. And this is how, Cortes repays him. Cortes, if you remember from not only last chapter, but, the last slide I said about a minute ago, Montezuma had been going around to these other villages and defeating them and taking them into slavery and making them work for the Aztec Empire. All of a sudden, Cortes comes in. He starts going around to the other villages that have been defeated, like, hey, let's get rid of the Aztecs. And the people that have been defeated in the other village are like, hey, this doesn't sound like a bad idea. Maybe we should get rid of the Aztecs. And so he basically leads an uprising. So not only does he have horses, not only does he have weaponry, not only do they have advanced armor, they also have the help of a lot of these villages surrounding the city and village and community of Tenochtitlan that have been defeated by the Aztec Empire. And so he repays Montezuma's hospitality by basically chopping his head off and taking over his Aztec Empire. Spoiler, though, he then, hey, let's get rid of Montezuma and let's, I'll give you your villages back. And then the people in the villages are like, hey, now let's get our villages back. And then they get rid of Montezuma, and he's like, sorry, I'm not really going to give you your villages back. I'm the king now. And so Cortes and basically 500 Spaniards take over most of what we now consider to be Mexico. Our next guy is Francisco Pizarro, Frankie Pizza, as a lot of students in the past have called him, although you probably don't want to put that on the test if you're interested in getting the question right. But he had heard stories that basically like they had cities and buildings covered, like literally made out of gold, entire buildings made just from solid gold, and the streets are made of gold, which sounds cool, but in reality, it's not practical. If you made your house out of solid gold, like it would be like a giant oven, and it, people inside would, they'd probably just get up and leave once it got to about 125 degrees. But if they stayed much longer, they would cook to death. So yeah, the idea of a building made out of solid gold sounds like a cool idea, but in reality, it would be terrible. But he was captured, or the leader of the Incan Empire was captured by Pizarro. His name was Atahualpa. And one of these things about these, we talked about the dudes that would march up to the top of the temple and be like, hey, God told me to give me a bunch of gold. And people are just like, okay. When you base your entire civilization around this one priest and this one leader, whenever he was captured, these people really didn't know what to do. They were running around basically like chickens with their heads cut off. Atahualpa was like, hey, fight Pizarro. And then Pizarro, they're like, okay. And then Pizarro captured Atahualpa, and they were like, okay, what now? What do we do now? And they were like, well, he told us to fight him. Yeah, but he's gone now. So now what do we do? And so they were pretty literally unable to process any information without their ruler telling them specifically at all times of day what to do. So they accused him of committing crimes he didn't, and they executed him. And so, like I said, without leadership, they had no real vision or future. And so within a few years, Pizarro had control of most of the empire. Okay, I'm going to go on. I know I'm going too fast here, but like I said, the notes you either have a paper copy of, or these will be attached to. And like I said, I've got to get ready for this meeting here in a few minutes. So, like I said, guns, cannons, horses, heavy metal armor, heavy metal like the weight of it, not like rock and roll heavy metal. But anyway, and so, like I said, whenever you had never seen these weapons before, they're overwhelming to you, and they really were literally overwhelming to the Spaniard, or to the Mexicans, or the Aztec, or the people living in Central and South America by the Spaniards. The Spaniards are the one doing the overrunning. And so again, these are, think about we all have the idea of the gun because it's been a part of our lives for our entire lives. Guns have existed for hundreds of years now, but when they were entirely new to you, the idea that you could literally just point a stick at somebody and make them, die without throwing or stabbing or shooting a bow and arrow, to these people is incredible. But the biggest cost of life that the Europeans brought was in new diseases. And now, like I said, this hits a little bit more closely to home than it has in years past. Because basically, if your culture, we'd had the plague in Europe, and there had been germs that people had been basically gaining immunity to. And that's how it works. If you beat it, if you die from a disease, you're dead, obviously. But if you beat the disease, you gain stronger immunity to it. And then your children are born with that stronger immunity. And then they go through even stronger diseases, and their children are born with even stronger immunity. And then the disease has to fortify, it gets stronger. And so then the next generation, their immunity gets stronger. And so then the disease gets stronger. And then the immunity gets stronger. Then the disease gets stronger, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But when you are a civilization on the entire other side of the world that never had any of these diseases, smallpox is the one that did people in the most. When a new germ or disease is introduced into a community, it literally wiped out entire civilizations, hundreds of thousands of people. Okay. And we're seeing a smaller scale version of this right now with the coronavirus. Obviously, we're at 190,000 Americans dead, which is not the same scale as it was back then. Now, of course, we have incredible advances in modern medicine and treatment now, but still, by the end of the month, we're going to pass 200,000 people. And that's an incredible loss for sitting here in the year 2020. But when you're talking about, the 1400s or whatever, there's no, if you're going to go to the doctor, like best case scenario, he puts a leech on you, like, oh, I hope he sucks the poison blood out, which is not really how medicine works. But they didn't know back then, of course. Like I said in the last chapter, they've just discovered that if you put seeds in the ground, that can grow. So they're obviously hundreds of years behind where we are now. And so literally hundreds of thousands of Native Americans were wiped out. And so this really kills the civilization. Juan Ponce de Leon, he made the first permanent settlement in what we now call the United States, St. Augustine, Florida. He was looking for a mythical fountain of youth, a fountain that you could drink water from and you would stay that age forever, which is a whole nother thing, whether that sounds good or not. It sounds cool now to stay whatever age you would pick forever, but 150, 200, 1,000 years in, you'd be like, okay, might be a little bit bored of this. But 1565, he creates the first permanent settlement in what we now call the United States. So remote learners, especially, you need to check in with your attendance question. I'll put a form on there when I put this in Google Classroom. And the attendance question today, I don't know, let's think about what is your favorite time of year? Your favorite, like I love summer, I love fall, I love Thanksgiving time. I like because I go, whatever. What's your favorite time of the year? It could be a season or more specific than that. It's up to you. So all you got to do is answer that in the purple Google form. In-person learners, I will know that you did this because I will grade your notebook. So if you want to fill out the form too, that's fine. But you don't necessarily have to. So otherwise, you guys have a good day. If you go out, keep your mask on like I will when I go to my meeting here in a minute. And I will see you soon. Bye.